Hello guys, today I'm going to show you the routine I do with my... hang on. Whetstone. I just love tools. Like a lot of makers, I just adore owning really beautiful tools and equipment, and looking after those tools is another part that brings me so much joy as a maker. So after a few comments that I was receiving about my sharpening routine, I decided it was high time I showed you behind the scenes of how I care for my tools. Now I look after my tools pretty well anyway, but I realised there was one on my shelf that was being a little bit neglected. This plane is the cutest thing I own by far, including Psyduck. Just kidding. But seriously, look at this. Oh, the little baby! It's like a little friend that I put on my shelf, and it keeps me happy because it's very small, like me. As a very small person myself, I identify with small objects because I know how they feel. So I thought I'd take the blade out today and give it some love. I'm going to re-hone the blade on my grinding wheel, and I'm going to create a hollow ground blade, and then I'm going to just hone it right up to a beautiful sharpness that I can use for many precise techniques in guitar making. It's something so important to remember in woodwork. If you have blunt tools, your work is going to be 10 times worse and 10 times slower. If you have beautifully sharp, looked after tools, it will not only be a joy to use them, but also the precision will be better, the work will be better, and subsequently you will feel better as a craftsperson or maker. Just a bit about this plane. It is a model maker's plane from Lee Nielsen. I believe its official Latin name is Squirrelus planus. I definitely didn't make that up. Obviously it looks like a squirrel, so that's clearly where the name came from. Now I'm going to try and get in as close as I can with this awesome macro lens that I've got, but as you can see, the blade is not looking so hot right now. That nice silver edge on it, that's bluntness, ladies and gentlemen. That is not good for tools. I actually took a picture for my friend when I was trying to teach him sharpening the other day, and I got a cracking photograph of a horrendously blunt plane blade, so here's that photo. Ooh. Interestingly, he couldn't actually see it in the flesh because I think it's one of those things that you really have to train your eye to see. And I suppose if you've been a woodworker for so long that you just take those things for granted, show it to somebody who hasn't ever sharpened a blade and you'll be amazed at what they can't see. I also incidentally find this with Luthier. Like if I see a big gaping mistake in my work and I have to go back and correct it, but I show it to my friend, they're like, looks fine to me, it looks perfect. And it's just really interesting how the journey of woodwork and any craft just encapsulates this refinement into sort of perfectionism. Anyway, moving on. One of the classic woodworking tips when you're testing for a tool's sharpness is to use your arm to dictate the sharpness of your blade. It should shave the hair off with no problems at all. As you can see here though, it is doing nothing of the sort. It's just scraping my skin a little bit. It's just a little bit uncomfortable. But thankfully we have a solution to this absolute abomination of a blunt blade that comes in the form of a jet whetstone sharpening machine. Jet whetstone sharpening machine. It's like a tongue twister on a re-grinding wheel thing. Let's call it that. Now you'll notice that this is a wheel and subsequently radiuses are involved and diameters. So here's a quick explainer about the implications of having this wheel as a grinder and not just a straight flat belt. Now I'm going to be hollow grinding my blade. That's because when I'm sharpening it, if I want to do it freehand, I do have a honing guide which I'll show you later, but if I do want to do it freehand, then it creates 2 points of contact with the stone so that I can find the angle extremely easily. This radius is something like an 8-inch radius, I think, so it's providing a nice little hollow, but it's not as drastic as a 12-inch, for example, which would be a lot flatter, because I do want to maintain 2 pivot points in my blade, just in case I want to go in with by hand if I don't have a honing guide to hand or I can't be asked to set it up. I just want to have those 2 points of contact so I know the angle's really consistent and I don't have to work to take all of the steel off in the middle. It's just those 2 points, which makes life a lot quicker and a lot easier on quick sharpens. So first things first, I'm going to put it in the jig, and I've got something called an angle finder on the go here, this red thing, and we're just going to move the blade down until it sits on that stone so that the angle finder sits flush against the top of the blade. Now, as I suggested earlier, this is a whetstone, whichever way you want to spell it. So we got to make sure there is water. Otherwise, you know, metal and friction equals sparks. Not good for a wood workshop, let me tell you. Not with all that wood lying around. It also just helps to keep it cool so that you can touch it with your hands. Sorry, not sorry for the state of my hands in this video. If I get any comments again, like my last video on Instagram where people were telling me to clean my nails, I will kick off. So don't do it. You know that I have a job which is dirty. Deal with it. Now, as you can see, I'm evenly distributing pressure across the length of the stone as I'm going, because I really don't want to end up with a stone that is more ground in one part than another. So the way you can prevent this is simply to do what I'm doing here and take it to the edge, lift it up, take it back, keep doing that, and then switch sides whenever you fancy. Just keeps the stone nice and consistent so you don't constantly have to resurface it. Occasionally, because sometimes the jig can be set up as well as you can, but it's going to sometimes for some reason drift off square, so it's good to keep checking for that and just make the adjustments as and when is necessary. I tend to use a fretting hammer just to tap it back into place. Now you can really see here that nice hollow that's happening in accordance with the radius of the stone. What we can see is this nice thing called a burr at the end of the blade, which, as you can see in this frame here, is just basically the steel that's been pushed up the blade as it's been ground away, and it just results in this little extra bit of steel that will eventually be taken off, and that is where the sharp point comes in. So what we have to do now is remove that burr to reveal the beautiful sharpness of the blade by going to the back of the plane and just giving it a little flatten. I'm just going to give you a really crude example of exactly what's going on here with this burr. So obviously the burr is at a much more micro level, but if we take this bit of veneer here, you can see, and I'm going to break it one way, then we actually have to break it back the other way in order to split it, right? So a burr is exactly the same process. If you do it one way, then it bends over, but then you've got to put it back the other way, and so forth to produce the sharp edge. That was not a very scientific experiment, but I hope that makes sense. That's how I first came to understand it anyway. I flatten the back in this kind of gentle figure of 8 motion because it uses the whole length of the stone and the width of the stone and provides a really even and thorough way of approaching things. I can see that that burr now has flipped direction, so we're going to go back to our sharpening stone and we're going to do the other side again. So this is the angle that we're left with, and it's got a nice hollow in it, and this is not actually the final thing, as we will explore. This is just one angle, and the way that we are going to proceed is by creating another angle here at 30 degrees. And this is where my beautiful jig comes in, that is a honing guide. Now, as I say, I do hollow grind it so that if I don't need the honing guide or anything, or if I can't be bothered to put it on, or if I'm in a rush, then I have a backup option. But ultimately, the honing guide provides a blade that is consistently sharp on one angle. I hone it to 30 degrees, and it's just perfect every time, and it saves a lot of faffing. This particular guide is from Veritas. I would highly recommend it. It's not cheap, but it's good. Like most tools that we own. So I'll start with the 1200 grit, and then I will go up to my 1800 grit, I believe, and then I will introduce a strop when the burr gets close, and it will disappear and disappear and disappear. So if you flip it back to the back and then to the front again, and it will just disappear into a beautiful line of sharp steel. And I think I've owed you a little test of this blade because it's just the best sound in the world. A plane that is sharp. I've got a scrap piece of wood that is waiting to be torn into a nice block of mahogany, so enjoy this little extract of ASMR pleasure. So that's it, that's my sharpening routine. I hope you enjoyed it. and I will be coming at you in the next few days with another video. Until then, I will see you soon. Thanks for liking, subscribing. Thanks for all of the lovely comments that you have left so far. It's a really great journey entering this whole YouTube space, and I'm really appreciating all the lovely comments that you're taking the time to send. Thank you so much, and keep those video suggestions coming. This video was a direct response to a few people's suggestions, so definitely keep doing that, and I will see you very soon.